Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Monica and we are back today for a video. Today's video is about Cassie, Diddy, victimhood, fear, just all of those kinds of concepts, big concepts, obvious trigger warnings that come with that, SA, DV, and those sensitive triggering topics. This is not going to be a video detailing explicitly like what's going on with the case. It's going to be more so just about reflections around victims, how we talk about victims, do we believe victims, and also just as women, as girls, what to watch out for, what to be careful with, and then also in general within all of these intense news cycles that are going on, what we can do in our own daily lives to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves and focusing on ourselves so we can move forward, and not get lost in the quote-unquote drama of it all, right? Because this isn't drama, this is people's real lives. Real lives are affected by this, but within the way that social media is and news cycles are, it just becomes another story time, another drama series, and it just becomes a way for us to kind of like fixate on other people's problems and these what feel like crazy outlandish things to live vicariously through, to continually evade what we were put on this earth to do, right? So we're going to talk about a bunch of things. Thank you so much for tuning back in. If you haven't checked it out already, I just started a new Wednesday series, Studio Wednesdays. In Studio Wednesdays, it's just basically more chill vibes, hanging out, me talking about my artistic process and just different things that I'm thinking about in that moment. The first episode I just dropped this Wednesday, and we are preparing some surfaces for me to paint on. I have an art show coming up, so go over there if you ever want something more like chill. I'm just trying to like put out more content and just show you guys what I'm doing like on a general basis outside of just being over here yapping. Like, what am I also doing in my other interests and career period. So let's get right into it. Okay, so right now in the news cycles and my timeline, there's a lot of conversations around a lot of sort of DV situations, right? So from Cassie and Diddy to DDG and Halle to Meg Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez being in the news cycles again because of what happened to Tory in prison. And then, you know, people start having analysis around this, and then before you know it, people are throwing Keke Palmer's situation back into it. I feel like a lot of like conversations are being had around these sort of like interpersonal, intimate dynamics and like what is a victim and like all of these kinds of things, right? And I just want to start off saying with the Diddy situation, I don't understand. I mean, I can understand. This is what we're going to talk about, right? Like, but I just generally can't wrap my head around how people can go from all these last few months, but also realistically years of clowning Diddy, of being like, I don't know how Diddy's getting away with it, of being like, Diddy is super duper freaky, like somebody needs to put his butt behind bars, like how is this happening, like, yo, don't let nobody around Diddy, like, to all of a sudden Cassie takes the stand and her case is not what's being like, is not what's on trial, right? She is just a witness. She's on the stand to essentially corroborate a pattern of behavior. We're not there to prove whether she was right or wrong, and then he will be facing time in relation to what he did or didn't do to her, right? But so it's to say this has already been addressed. But it's really interesting that as soon as her story starts being more fleshed out, and I feel like it's in the mix of a lot of other things, all of a sudden people are like, I don't know, I just feel like she got her money and ran. Like, I just feel like, you know, she was with it until she wasn't. And I'm just like, I don't know how people think victims, like, if you're not a perfect victim, essentially is what I'm trying to get at. Like, people will switch around and start pointing the finger at you, right? And when we get into the idea of what a perfect victim is, I just feel like if you're not like somebody that was clunked over the head and handcuffed and thrown in the trunk, people are not going to be like, oh no, this was totally against your will, right? Like, unless you, and even actually when that happens, people are gonna be like, I don't know, what were you wearing though to get clunked over the head and thrown into the back of a truck, right? Like, they're still gonna find ways to essentially put the fault on you. And that's essentially what I wanted to talk about, not Diddy and Cassie specifically, but why we think these things from my understanding and my perspective, and how it relates to a lot of other things. So I think one of the things that we struggle with in life in general, and this is like literally one of the functions of religion, of anything, like why do bad things happen? Like, why, like, how do we ward off bad things from happening? Like, how, like, when bad things happen, who's going to make it right? Is there some sort of like karmic justice, divine retribution? Is there somebody watching over us? How can we prevent the things that are unpreventable, right? How can good people do bad things and bad people do good things? Kind of like these really big questions, right? And I feel like there's people on this earth that know true evil. And I think there's people on this earth that have been very fortunate to not experience true evil. And it doesn't mean that your life is not bad, but it means that this sort of like internal conundrum is maybe not as ever present for you, or maybe you've been able to dissociate from it because of the evilness of it, right? So let me just get specific. So I feel like in my situation, I feel like I have been very privileged to have been protected and have made it out of, for example, childhood without having certain negative experiences, right? But for people that have experienced, let's say, SA as a child, that is, I feel like, one of the truest versions of evil that one can experience, because as a child you are inherently not at fault in any way, shape, or form, right? So when I say there are people on this earth that have experienced true evil, that's one of the people, that's like some of the people that I reference, right? Like, there is no gray area for me in the situation when it comes to an adult taking advantage of a child. But I think where the complication is with this idea of true evil, and like, I guess I say true evil in the sense that there isn't like a randomness to it. Because you could say like, okay, childhood cancer, God, why did something so evil happen? Like, you know, we're a hardworking family and we finally have our child and they end up getting sick in this, what feels like some sort of random, like, why? Like, it just feels, it's like, it feels evil, like God is being evil towards you, and it's something that no one could have done anything to control, right? But when it comes to child, like, violence and child abuse and that, in different situations, it's like, this was preventable in the sense that it's like someone literally took your destiny into their hands, right? It's evil. It's true evil. You can get into the complications around like, well, maybe as a child they went through something, whatever. But it's a very, for me, it's a lot clearer than some other things are on this earth, because in many cases there's other adults that could have helped, whatever. All I'm saying is that this is an example of a true abuse of power, a true evil, and there's people that have experienced that, right? Meaning that this concept of what is the devil, what is evil on earth, what does having your power taken from you look like? It doesn't look like this super big, grand, thought out ordeal. It's sometimes somebody that you are closely related to taking advantage of you in a way that is beyond your control, and there's nothing you could have done, right? And I think sometimes we want to see evil as these majorly over the top, exaggerated, villainous creatures, and not as the person that's literally right next to me, right? The true capacity for evil. I think the ability to inflict pain and to take people's power, as humans, this is something that I feel like if you're aware of yourself and your actions, you can see clearly how, for lack of better words, easy it is to destroy someone. Like, you can really ruin people's lives. You could really do evil on this earth. I don't see my capacity for evil as like some foreign concept. I see it as a choice every day. Like, we can all collectively lose our mind and make a crazy choice. It's not, I don't see it as this like, oh my God, like this is this thing into history books, is this thing on the news that it's, but I can tuck away in the safety of my bed and not have to deal with it. No, it is an ever-present force in everybody around us. And I don't mean that in like a paranoid way, right? Because I don't mean that like I'm like constantly like on the lookout. But I guess it's to say, like, I think a lot of us struggle with the concept that there is evil on this earth and it's unjustified and it's beyond our control, and it's sometimes presented in the forms of our caretakers, of people that are entrusted to be around us, right? And then how do you deal with that sort of dissonance? That this person that was supposed to provide me in the specific scenario I'm giving of like child SA or whatever, child abuse, this person that's supposed to like protect me, take care of me, do all these things, and maybe does it in certain ways, can also do something evil and unjustifiable to me that is beyond my control. And in that, maybe when you're young, beyond even your cognition, your ability to wrap your head around it, right? Like, so it's this complication that then you're like, hey, I'm a child, I still love this individual, and I don't want to believe that they would do something to me. I think the concept of having something done to you is a really difficult thing to wrap your head around. That's why when people are talking about with Cassie, right, like her being like, I would look forward to these freak offs and I would look forward to spending time with Diddy. I think a lot of people can't wrap their heads around, and I'm sure she herself as a victim struggled to deal with the fact that even though something wrong was being done, something that was an abuse of power, something that was an abuse of not only her boundaries, but I'm sure of other people's boundaries, and it was something that she was also at times complicit in, and something that she probably also looked forward to and enjoy as a way to have closeness with somebody that she, you know, pedestalized and saw as somebody that was supposed to take care of her and protect her in this industry, but also in their intimate partnership, right? So I think that's one of the most difficult things with like coming to reckoning with your victimhood, is if you have the complication around, hey, I may have been complicit in the way that maybe I reached out for it, I wanted it, I felt good in the moment with it. But then understanding as you become more proficient in the harm that was done to you, and you can gain that proficiency through people in your life, through, I'm sure, you know, Cassie's marriage, and I can imagine like therapy and stuff, helped her develop proficiency in what had happened to her, how to not only communicate it, but also how to assimilate what had happened to her, where she may have been at fault, where she may have let things gone too far, but also where it all started. And I think one of the things that's important to remember, like for example in this Diddy situation, is that, because I think the complication right now is because Cassie is talking about how she looked forward to these things, and people were like, oh, you know, well, if she looked forward to it, that means that she liked it, that like how like she liked to do these things. And I just feel like it's something that didn't begin or end with her. It's something that was already existing through Diddy before her and continued to exist after her, right? This is something that she found herself in. And when you think a lot about her being a young woman, her being, I think, 19 when they met, and I think they were together from her early 20s. I think there's a lot that you don't know about yourself and that you don't know about intimate relationships. And I think especially being brought up as a model and in the music industry, and also, you know, being a woman, but in general, like you are trained to please. I think our understanding present day of a lot of like influencers, creators, actors, models, whatever, like I think now we have more literacy in what it means to inhabit these spaces and what may come with it. But back then you had no choice but to, you know, think about America's Next Top Model, right? Like if Tyra tells you wear blackface and jump off a bridge, and get the shot, and then when you don't get the shot, you're being yelled at and berated by 4 people that are industry professionals on the panel. Like, that, what, like, who was gonna rally and do anything? Everybody was watching that at home like, yeah, she could have done better. If it was me, like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of conversations have changed, and I think that the general public has become more informed in like what's right and what's wrong, but also people themselves have become more proficient in their own abuse and misuse of power. And with that comes great responsibility. So things that may have been normal in the moment back then, in the moment where she was like, okay, I'm in this industry, I have to like put up with these certain things, I have to accept these certain things. I think obviously with time and with things getting, I can imagine there was an escalation in activity. I'm sure in the beginning especially when she was talking about looking forward to stuff, like, you know, asking him how would he like teach me how to do these things. I'm sure that was earlier in the relationship during a time where there was maybe more quote unquote love bombing, where maybe it was more positive, or maybe he was nicer, or maybe it was like, I'm still trying to keep this girl in here, right? Like, you're not gonna, I think a lot of people that haven't experienced abuse intimately, sometimes feel like it just kind of happens in a flash. And I think for the people that even go through it and are actively going through it, you kind of don't understand how it got there, because that's not how it started, right? And I think a lot of the disdain when it comes to being a victim comes from, once again, feeling like something was done to you, and no one wants to feel like they made the wrong choice. No one wants to feel like they were stupid, like they're a bad person. So it's kind of like, you can't necessarily pinpoint where things got off the rails, or maybe you can pinpoint where things got off the rails. You can recognize a moment where maybe everyone in your life was telling you, yo, get out, these are the red flags, where maybe you yourself were doing the research and you're like, hey, I'm noticing all these things, but like for some reason I can't leave, right? And I think then that's where the self-blame comes in. And if you do build up the courage to actually say something later on, that's when the public blame comes in, which is an affirmation of your deepest fear, which may have originally been, maybe I deserve this and maybe it's my fault, right? And ultimately, it is not your fault. Are there things that we could do that are like that make it so we don't end up in certain positions? Absolutely. But what I would argue is that a lot of the ways in which we are raised and the way that our society functions, especially when it comes to women and girls, is in a way in which they are essentially complicit. Not, maybe complicit is the wrong word, because that sounds like you have consent and choice, but where essentially you are trained to please and to essentially stay quiet in these positions, right? I wanted to talk about kind of like the ways in which, like, societally we kind of train people to put up with certain things like this, to hide the abuse that they're going through, and also to not accept it but feel like they're deserving of it, right? I think one of the most important things as an individual in general is to make sure you love yourself, right? Blanket statement, cliche, empty platitude. What does that mean? But it's like, you cannot love someone more than you love yourself, right? Because it comes with a lot of complications. And I think the way a lot of our love is shown is through this sort of like self-sacrifice and almost martyrdom. Even when you get into the ideas of ride or die, like, yo, if you sink in the ship, I'm going down with you, babe, right? Like, and it's just like, I don't think so. Because I do believe that my role on this earth and my purpose on this earth and my existence on this earth is inherently valuable. And that's something that I've had to like learn and accept and grow into. And I think it's something that a lot of us aren't inherently raised within. Like, anytime I meet a woman that's like was raised with like this inherent self-esteem, she didn't have to fight tooth and nail and go through 100 different transformation and self-realization during her 20s to achieve. I'm like, wow, a goddess amongst us. How the other half lives. Can't wait to be you in my next lifetime, sis. I love it, right? But for a lot of us, it didn't come from that. So I wanted to read this quote, right? Because I think a lot of us come from these hypercritical environments that blame girls for the things they can't control, like, for example, like their bodies changing, the developmentally appropriate independence and individuation that we want to go through, right? So like imagine yourself being a kid, and on top of being a kid being weird, now all of a sudden everybody's coming at you for things that you can't control. Now everybody's telling you, you need to do this, you need to do that. Why are you dressed like this? You're moving real fast. Oh, you think you whatever, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, hey, I'm not even doing anything. Like I'm legitimately a child. And then when I say the developmentally appropriate individuation that we go through our adolescence, like it is developmentally appropriate. This was one of the big things for me that I had to kind of like realize as a way to empathize and forgive and love myself, is that the desire to act out in your adolescence is developmentally appropriate. Like it is literally in your brain to want to individuate yourself, to find your own identity separate from your caretakers and the environment that you're immediately around, as a way of finding yourself. You're essentially appropriately pushing against the limitations of your immediate environment to find what is right and what is wrong and who you are within that, right? But you can't tell that to a lot of our caretakers, right? You can't tell that to a lot of the members in our communities, right? Because the moment that you want to act out, talk back, and the thing is, like, that talking back sometimes don't even be crazy. It just be having a different opinion than somebody around you. Like the moment that you want to individuate, not even rebel, like literally have a different opinion and verbalize it, for a lot of us, it's a problem, right? All of a sudden it's like, oh, you think you better than everybody. Oh, you think you smart. And it comes with a consequence, right? It comes with either being called out, a physical consequence, having something taken from you. You're essentially being raised in an environment of fear. You as yourself and the you that you want to be, you're now in a conflict. You have to pick between you and the people that have given you everything. And that is an impossible situation, because at that point, for a lot of us, we're still children. So you can't pick you, because picking you means being cut off from survival, means being cut off from the things that you still need as a child. So it's like, oh, you want to be grown? As if like having your own concepts as being grown. You want to be grown? It's like you can't be grown because you're still a child, right? So you're essentially being trained to love someone else more than you love yourself. To show, not even love, but to show your devotion, to self-sacrifice, to pedestalize, to bow down, to crush yourself in order to survive in an environment where you are developing this intuition. Your body is sending all the signals. Your brain is starting to connect the dots. If you want to look at it in a spiritual sense, your ancestors are talking to you and through you. And you are having to shut down all of those signals to survive and to exist, and to not be berated, to not have things taken from you, to not be, et cetera, et cetera. So you are essentially being put through freaking boot camp to not trust yourself, to not believe in yourself, to hear yourself speak and think, and to be like, no, that is wrong and that is dangerous. So then what happens is that when you are in these situations, when you are older, and somebody is doing something that all of your signals in your body and your mind and your heart and your spirit are telling you, hey, that's wrong. That's not what love is supposed to be, right? Like when I think about the love in the movies, when I think about the love in the songs, when I see love through maybe what my friends are experiencing, like I don't feel like this is love. But in every single way that you have been raised up until this point, love has meant giving up a part of who you are to be accepted by someone else. And then you spend your entire life fighting to be loved when there's people already actively giving it to you freely. But if you have had to work to be loved, if you had to fight to be understood, if you had to scream and kick and yell to be accepted, to be heard, to do all, to just exist, when that's not there, who are you, right? And I think that was a lot of the struggle through my 20s, which was just, hey, now that I'm no longer in the immediate environment that I'm in, which is the environment that a lot of us are in. I'm not saying my situation was exceptionally horrific in any single way, like, but it's like, now that I'm not in this immediate environment where I feel stifled and unheard and misunderstood and not seen, who am I? What is it? What do I want from the world around me, and how do I continue to create these same cycles in my immediate environment? And it was very easy and second nature, actually primary nature, to perpetuate these cycles within the people that I kept around me or within my own consciousness, which then created the environment around me, right? But that came at a time where I had a lot more flexibility, freedom, and privilege to reflect on my life and, you know, to think about things. And I feel like what helped me and what saved me was the fact, on one end, luck, being like divinely protected, feel like in whatever capacity, whether you want to make it spiritual, I have somebody praying at home for me, and sometimes that's not even enough for a lot of us, right? But like being that's why I say it's kind of like luck. I'm lucky that a lot of things didn't happen to me, and a lot of people can't say that situation, right? Okay, so I'm going to read an excerpt from Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me. If you're unfamiliar with Between the World and Me, it's a book from 2015 where he wrote a letter to his 15-year-old son about the realities of being Black in America. It's quite a long quote. I'm going to try to trim it down, but I feel like it's a gorgeous excerpt on the realities of fear in a lot of our communities, right? So it goes, and I am afraid. I feel the fear most acutely whenever you leave me, but I was afraid long before you, and in this I was unoriginal. When I was your age, the only people I knew were Black, and all of them were powerfully, adamantly, dangerously afraid. I had seen this fear all my young life, though I had not always recognized it as such. It was right there in front of me. The fear was there in the extravagant boys of my neighborhood, in their large rings and medallions, their big puffy coats and full-length fur-collared leathers, which was their armor against their world. I think back on those boys now, and all I see is fear, and all I see is them girding themselves against the ghost of the bad old days when the Mississippi mob gathered around their grandfather so that the branches of the Black body might be torched and cut away. I saw it in the girls, in their loud laughter, in their gilded bamboo earrings that announced their names thrice over. I saw it in their brutal language and hard gaze, how they would cut you with their eyes and destroy you with their words for the sin of playing too much. Keep my name out your mouth, they would say. I would watch them after school, how they squared off like boxers, Vaselined up, earrings off, Reeboks on, and leapt at each other. I felt the fear in the visits to my Nana's home in Philadelphia. You never knew her. I barely knew her. But what I remember is her hard manner, her rough voice, and I knew that my father's father was dead, and that my Uncle Oscar was dead, and that my Uncle David was dead, and that each of these instances was unnatural. And I saw it in my own father, who loves you, who counsels you, who slipped me money to care for you. My father was so very afraid. I felt it in the sting of his black leather belt, which he applied with more anxiety than anger. My father, who beat me as if someone might steal me away, because that is exactly what was happening all around us. Everyone had lost a child, somehow, to the streets, to jail, to drugs, to guns. It was said that these lost girls were as sweet as honey and would not hurt a fly. It was said that these boys had just received a GED and had begun to turn their lives around, and now they were gone, and their legacy was a great fear. Have they told you this story? When your grandmother was 16 years old, a young man knocked on her door. The young man was your Nana Jill's boyfriend. No one else was home. Ma allowed this young man to sit and wait until your Nana Jill returned. But your great-grandmother got there first. She asked the young man to leave, then she beat your grandmother terrifically one last time so that she might remember how easily she could lose her body. Ma never forgot. I remember her clutching my small hand tightly as we crossed the street. She would tell me that if I ever let go and were killed by an onrushing car, she would beat me back to life. When I was 6, Ma and Dad took me to a local park. I slipped from their gaze and found a playground. Your grandparents spent anxious minutes looking for me. When they found me, Dad did what every parent I knew would have done. He reached for his belt. I remember watching him in kind of a daze, awed at the distance between punishment and offense. Later, I would hear it in Dad's voice. Either I can beat him or the police. Maybe that saved me. Maybe it didn't. All I know is the violence rose from the fear like smoke from a fire, and I cannot say whether that violence, even administered in fear and love, sounded the alarm or choked us at the exit. What I know is that fathers who slam their teenage boys' for SAS would then release them to the streets where their boys employed and were subject to the same justice. I knew mothers who belted their girls, but the belt could not save these girls from drug dealers twice their age. We, the children, employed our darkest humor to cope. We stood in the alley where we shot basketballs through hollowed crates and cracked jokes on the boys whose mother wore him out with a beating in front of his entire 5th grade class. We sat on the number 5 bus headed downtown, laughing at some girl whose mother was known to reach for anything. Cable wires, extension cords, pots, pans, we were laughing. But I know that we were afraid of those who loved us most. Wow. Okay. Ooh. So I've always loved this excerpt because I think it encapsulates perfectly the sort of cycle of fear, where it comes from, how we pass it forward, and how it still doesn't protect us from the evils of the world, right? How people do their best, how we do our best, how our elders did their best to protect us against the evils in the ways in which they knew best, which was through fear, which was through a physical sort of intervention, for lack of better words, through verbal beratement, as in like saying the worst things you could possibly imagine, because as you get older, you witness and experience and the worst things possibly imagined. And you see this child, this innocent blank canvas of a child, and I think it triggers something in a lot of our elders and in a lot of us, where we see how they could be taken from us, and it brings out the worst triggers. And it's not to excuse, but I think it's to contextualize the ways in which a lot of us have been raised to see this fear, this physical, verbal abuse, for lack of better words, as care, because that was the only way in which a lot of our elders and a lot of us know how to show care. This deep, very real fear, this physical fear, because I think that's a lot of the complications with the Black body, is that it is in everything. It is in relation to your body, to your lack of agency, to your lack of control of your own body. The fact that for a small mistake, your body can be taken from you and put in the back of a car and behind bars, right? The fact that your body has never within American history has ever been your own. And I think the people that know this best are the people that have had to live through it, a lot of our elders, and this fear manifests in this deep desire for control. Yeah, I think when he says we were laughing, but I know we were afraid of those who loved us most. I think a lot of us learn that love is fear. And I think what our job is to break cycles is to create that disconnect, to reframe our perception and the way in which we show care, and to not jump to aggression, to it physical or verbal, out of fear. And I think a lot of us enact this, and it's not perfect. I think that's why a lot of people struggle with the concept of victimhood, because we feel like, well, you should have known better and you participated. And if, the fear of this individual wasn't enough to make you leave, then there's something inherently wrong with you. But that's why I connected it to childhood, and I read this, is because in many cases, that's what grooming is. So if you're being taken in any capacity and you become financially dependent, or at least mentally dependent, from the perspective that you have been raised by an individual who has an immense power over you in age and in resources and in connections in an industry that you were making your career, that you were making your livelihood, and your livelihood is connected to your survival. You are now having a conversation not about love, but about surviving, right? And even though you may have participated and performed in the beginning, we have to remember Cassie is a performer. Ultimately, she was a model and she was a musician. That is the difficulty of being raised in these environments when you're a child star, or when you're a young star in whatever capacity, or when you get certain kinds of trainings, is that you are essentially being trained to go against your own intuition and be complicit in your own loss of agency. Like, it's like, oh, you wanna be a star, as in the America's Next Top Model theme song. This is what you have to do. You have to give up agency. You have to let somebody control you. You have to be polite, sit nice, don't talk back, because when you talk back, especially as a woman, especially Cassie as a woman of color, you are going to be disconnected from the environment that you need to thrive. Essentially, your livelihood and your future earnings are being taken from you. Now you could say, oh man, well, who cares? You don't have to be a major celebrity. You could just go and like be a regular job and be a regular person. That's all well and good, but it's just like, you have to, I was like thinking about this a lot. I'm like, you have to contextualize this from the perspective of, she was on her way up. She was presented to one of the music industry gods at the time, who had immense power. I think sometimes people are just like, well, that's the industry. And it's just like, yeah, but it's like, we could have better standards, right? So if you're being at a young age, especially during a time where there were even less resources for awareness of what are different types of abuses, the ways in which they show up, open conversations around them, right? Like, if you're being presented with what feels like the opportunity of a lifetime, and all you got to do is sometimes do this kind of weird stuff, but you're like, okay, whatever, like, he's still really nice to me, and like, we're still working on my project, and I'm in the studio, and we're gonna have this job, all right, like, whatever, like, it just is what it is. This is how we connect. He's a little bit of a weird character, but he's an artist, I'm an artist, whatever, we're weird, we're not living a regular life. But then before you know it, time is ticking, your life continues to go, you have strayed far from self, and you are maybe realizing maybe that project that we've been working on this entire time is actually never going to drop. Maybe my life is kind of like flashing before my eyes. I'm losing some of the most productive years of my life, and I don't know how to leave this situation, right? So I guess it's just to say that it's really complicated. And I think a lot of our roles on this earth is to fight that urge to prove ourselves in order to be loved and to be protected and to be taken care of, because that's the ways in which a lot of us have been raised. But to break that cycle is to essentially build up your self-esteem in whatever capacity. And I think we lose a lot of people to that fight, to that uphill struggle of feeling like you have to fight to be loved. Self-esteem, a lack of self-esteem and insecurity is extremely dangerous for both men and women alike, right? And like, that's kind of like some of the conversations people are having around DDG and Halle, right? And you can even say about Diddy, the jealousy that a man has over a woman or whatever. And I think, yeah, a man that's deeply insecure, just like a woman that's deeply insecure, is going to find themselves in spaces that they should not be, looking for love in places that they should not, and doing things to possess and to control. So I think sometimes the way that it presents in men is that their understanding of love is possession, control, coercion, for lack of better words. It's like you have to fight for it. There's this sort of like warrior mentality that's like pedestalized. Like, you go out there and you're on the hunt. You're trying to get these girls. You're trying to keep them. And I do strongly believe, and this is just in general, but like things to be wary of. I do believe that when you are a confident, talented person that shines bright, especially when you've been through stuff, especially like when it's just like, yo, I have been through some stuff that people don't even know about, but every day I choose good. Every day I choose joy. Every day I choose to improve myself, to just radiate light and joy through the world. Sometimes, a lot of times, when the world sees that, they want to take that and control that, right? And I was never that type of person. I was never like a evil eye person. I was never like, oh my God, haters are watching kind of person. Oh my God, people are trying to hurt me kind of person. Like, I could never even conceptualize a world where people were saying bad things about me, and not even from an arrogant, like I'm better than perspective, but from a perspective it's like, what could anybody even possibly want or say or do or whatever. But the older I get, the more I realize that it's that transition that happens through your 20s. We are in the series finale of my 20s. I say it every video. But it's that transition where you go from that way of being kind of innate to you. So even if you went through struggle, the beginning of your 20s for a lot of us feels like the world is open. There's so much opportunity. There's so much you could do. You have this inherent sort of vibrancy to you because you are just experiencing so many things for the first time. And for a lot of us, we have a very hopeful attitude. And then what happens through your 20s is that some of that light is dimmed. It doesn't have to be that way. We have a lot of control in our perspective when we develop self-awareness and proficiency in ourselves. So that's a whole other conversation. But essentially, time starts ticking, like time passes, and you start to realize, like, oh, damn, maybe certain doors are closing. Maybe I'm not who I'm meant to be. Maybe blah, blah, blah. Maybe, and like you can find yourself becoming a hater, and you can find yourself becoming, for lack of better words, toxic. And you can find yourself looking at other people with that evil eye, being like, yo, I've been on this earth for 10 years longer than this girl that's entering the industry now. What makes her think that she better than me, right? Like, it's so easy to get into that perspective. And through that, you start to spew the same hate that was spewed to you, but you have now your personal context for doing it. You're like, wait, no, I'm not being a hater. I'm not being evil. I'm not being controlling. I'm not being spiteful. I'm not being malicious. I'm being factual. This is how life is. This is what I had to go through. This little girl has never had to go through any of that. She's going to learn. She's going to see what happens. But it's just like, no, we don't have to tough love. We don't have to, beat these kids over their head so they can experience what we went through and they develop a right kind of way of thinking. We have to believe that we didn't go through what we went through because we had to, but we have to kind of, and that's the difficult part. And I think that's why people struggle to understand victims, especially as you get older. You get that old head mentality, is because you start to kind of have distance from maybe certain injustices that were done to you, but you also start to see the way in which paths open, and you're like, yo, I could see how a parent would end up doing that situation. I could see how I grew up. Like, for me, one of my issues is I yell. Like, it's my go-to. Like, I have to really watch my volume. Like, I can get triggered and my voice immediately like shoots up. Like, I just talk loud. I could say it's because I'm Dominican, I'm from New York. Like, I could say all these things, but it's something that I have to adamantly work on because it's not how I want to be, right? But I can't, if I were to justify it from the perspective of like, well, if you weren't acting wrong, I wouldn't have to yell. You're making me yell. Like, if I view it from that perspective, then I don't have to grow. Then I am justified in the way that I am behaving because I was raised that way. And because I was raised that way, I developed common sense in other ways. Like, I can create that sort of perspective for myself that is like, oh yeah, I was yelled at a lot growing up. Now when I yell, I became who I am because of that, and I have sense because of that. Now I'm going to enact sense in other people by perpetuating the same cycle, and it's like, I'm okay. So yeah, you're gonna cry about it and it's gonna make you feel bad, but like, I made it through, so you're gonna have to figure it out too. And that's how we continue the same cycle, because it's difficult to be like, damn, no, wait, that was wrong. Like, that was wrong. And now it's hard for me to imagine a world where like somebody doesn't have to go through that. And there's this like bittersweetness that comes with realizing like, wait, I didn't have to go through that. And when you realize you didn't have to go through that, like it's the bittersweetness can present as anger, as resentment, as just a lot of emotions that you are not equipped to handle. And it's hard to see yourself as somebody worthy of compassion when your entire life you have been made out to feel like you're not worthy of compassion because you were doing wrong things. And then you start to be like, well, I was like yelled at and done, all these things were done to me, but it's like, I was acting out. I was a crazy kid. I was da-da-da-da-da. And it's just like, then you see, rather than when you were that kid and you were going through that and you were thinking like, you're in your room crying, you're like, when I'm a parent, I'm never going to do that to anybody. Then you grow up and you're like, nah, because these kids are out of control and we need to make sure they understand, because the way that these kids are acting out now, when I'm a parent, like, you start perpetuating the same cycle because you forgot the promise you made to yourself growing up, where it's like, I'm never going to do that to anybody, because you had common sense. Like, like children understand what's going on, but we continually beat them over the head to go against their better nature because of our own fear and the ways in which we were raised, and seeing that as right because we're afraid to try something new because the world is really, really, really scary. And that's what the Ta-Nehisi quote is about. The world is so scary, and there's so many things out of our control. What I can control is helping you understand the fear and the consequences of breaking the rules that I had to learn, and that made me who I am today. But we have to have the capacity to imagine a different world where we don't have to do these things and enact control in the same oppressive ways for the children and for all of us to be all right. And that cycle continues to perpetuate when y'all find yourself being like, I don't know, if it was me, I would have left them free calls. I wouldn't have done it. It's her fault. She liked it, whatever. I saw this TikTok that was like, how are the same people that are afraid to go up to the counter when they forget whatever sauce they ordered, let's say at a fast food place, how are those people that are afraid to essentially confront a server over something going on with their order, those same people being like, nah, she should have spoken up, she should have left, she should have gone to police earlier, whatever. It's like, what is this like dissonance right now? Like, as if it's easy to take control of your own destiny, to take agency over yourself when it's been taken from you, and when you've essentially been raised to not have any, or to not value yourself, right? So that's what all these things kind of remind me of. The ways in which we have had these things done to us, and then the ways in which we do it to other people. And if you get any pockets, any moments where you find yourself slightly freed from these things, let's say, right, you've gone through a lot of abuse or whatever, and in this very moment you're for some reason single, you're like, oh, okay, you see it as this bad thing, rather than continuing the perpetual chase for something, to feel something within you, to feel love, to fight like you fought it your entire life. If you find yourself in a moment where you're not tethered to any other being on this earth, you are so blessed in that you can really examine yourself closer, and you can regain that control, and that, not control, we can't control anything in this world, but that self-esteem. And that's why I think it's really important to develop your own interests, to develop passions, to get off of them damn phones, but not for real. Like, cause like I'm here thinking about all these things, but the news cycles are wild right now. Like the level of information that we have on one hand is important. It's interesting, and transparency and honesty and access to information is so important for all of our advancements, but I think it sometimes can cloud our realities as well, and it can cloud us from doing what we have to do within ourselves. And I've mentioned it in the previous video, but it's like we are not right just by finding wrong. So just because I sit here and I'm like, that's wrong, doesn't then mean that I'm gonna make the right choice when I'm in certain positions. And the ways in which I can work towards making better choices and developing the life that I visualize for myself. One, you have to be able to visualize it. And if you're on them damn phones all the time, taking in trauma, story time, absurdity, craziness, some real, some just blown over the top, right? You will never have the time and the mental fortitude to develop a vision for yourself. Like your brain is tired. You need to have a vision, a thought out vision for who you want to be. How does it feel to be the person that you want to be, to walk in the shoes that you want to walk, to exist in the space that you want to make, to look at your bank account and it has what you want to see in it, right? Like, what does that feel like? What does that look like? Now, how can you get there? And when you develop that vision for yourself, the discernment that we all already have, because sometimes people be like, nah, she's lacking discernment. People have discernment. People know, because think about anytime you watch a story time, or anytime anyone of your homegirls is telling you the craziest story of all time, they know. They're like, yeah, it was weird, but then you kept going. The discernment is always there. It's just the taking action, and we don't take action in our lives, right? If you are able to discern this is wrong, but you don't have a vision for yourself, you're just going to keep going down the same pathless path. You're just going to keep going down the same. You're going to follow somebody that doesn't have your best interests in mind, that doesn't care for you. And because you don't care for yourself more than you care for them, you're going to follow them to nowhere. But when you have a strong vision of who you want to be, who you are, what your values are, you will become less malleable, less it's less possible for someone to be like, hey, this is what I think about you, because you're going to be like, wait a second. The ways in which I have set up my life, all the goals that I set up for myself, all the ways that I've instilled confidence in myself, and you instill confidence in yourself by becoming a person of your word, by saying, today I'm going to wake up and do this, and then you actually do it. When you are able to develop that confidence in yourself, rather than being like, yeah, I am a fuck up. Yeah, I have messed up everything. Yeah, my mom was right. I'm never going to make it anywhere. But like, when you develop that confidence in yourself through doing, through every day waking up and in small ways doing, when somebody tries to tell you something about yourself, you're like, you may slip up in your moment. You're like, damn, like they hurt my feelings because it's true. But then you look around and you're like, wait a second. Look at the life that I have built for myself through, and this is where the radical empathy for yourself has to come in, and compassion through all the hardship. Okay, maybe it's not exactly where I want to be, but through all the hardship, I've been able to contextualize it, and I've been able to develop an accessible dream for myself, and I have been building towards it. And now this random person is coming through trying to tell me about this, and that, so they can love me, when it's like, inherently, I'm worthy of love. Because I've been on this path and I'm doing it and I'm me, right? And it's way easier said than done. But I think just that's something that I want us to remember while we're internalizing a lot of these really triggering things that are going on. Because they're always going on and they're always going to go on. I think we see it now more publicly and more fleshed out with full transcripts and stuff. But abuses against women and just in general, the loss of physical agency and just literal agency in your own life is a tale as old as time, right? And that's really unfortunate. And and if you've experienced something like that, you know, I hope you're finding compassion and time for yourself, and I hope you have support in your environment to navigate these things. And I hope that through that support and through the time that's going to pass, because time passes no matter what you do, you're able to find, you know, more confidence and self-esteem in yourself. That's what I'm working on. The Wednesday series about me walking the walk, not just talking the talk, me saying, hey, I'm going to follow my dreams. And then you guys can sit with me in the studio while I draw and I paint and I do all these things that I'm supposed to be doing, right? Like, and I talk about where I'm at and all the things that I'm working on. So essentially building that confidence in yourself so that you become the person that you want to be. And it's easier said than done, but that's the journey that we're on. And breaking cycles of abuse, of trauma, generational, just violence and tragedy. If it was easy, you wouldn't be in this position right now, right? But in the sense that you have the privilege of existing, you have the power to change your destiny, and through that, the trajectory of all of your descendants, the people after you, even if you don't choose to have children, the people around you and the people that come after them. So we have a lot of power and a lot of control, but it starts with being able to visualize something different. And we have not been trained to visualize something different because it is in our bodies and in our nervous system to fear out of survival. And I hope that in this lifetime, many of us are able to break that connection between fear and love and ascend, transcend, and connect. So thank you so much, you guys. So thank you so much for watching this video. I wish you all peace, safety, and support throughout these, you know, very, very difficult times for a lot of us. And let me know your thoughts. Let me know stuff that you guys want me to talk about. I've become more comfortable again with creating content, and I have more of a pep in my step. So if there's anything you guys want to hear, see, do, let's get to it. Thank you guys so much for your endless support. Just like how I talk about, like, you know, your own power to change the trajectory in people's lives through showing up. Just by you guys showing up in my comments and being authentic and sharing your stories, it helps me feel like, wait, no, all of this means something and we all have a purpose, and I'm not just yapping into the void. and vice versa. So thank you, stay safe, and see you guys on Wednesday. Bye.